We're talking about what are some issues in advising mental health kept coming up, because I know my experience has probably not been the only one where you've encountered all sorts of different mental health needs that your students or advisees are having, from disordered eating to suicidality to substance abuse. Even this is a stage of time of life where you might get a first-time diagnosis of something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And so we just have to be aware of the potential things that our students could be bringing to us might be of varying degrees and significance. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to sort that today and some of the resources that are available to us. So that's our goal, to identify practices and resources that can increase our overall emotional well-being. And we are going to start you by checking in with yourself. So on a 0 to 100, I give you permission to leave because you are about to have a breakdown. And I know I have all the power, and I give you a permission to leave. If you're at 100, you're about to have a breakdown. Like you're mentally not here, or you're so overwhelmed or so consumed with anxiety or depression that's 100. A zero is you're like in a hammock somewhere and you are calm and joyful internally.
Drink the umbrella in.
Yeah. So this is 0 to 100. So check in with yourself first, and then what you're willing to share with your neighbor, share with someone nearby what your number or what your general area is. And if you want to give a little bit about that background, feel free to. If you don't have to either, but I'm having to cut people off, so y'all are talking more than you're not. So I'm going to give you about 3 to 4 minutes to check in and to share a little bit about where you are. Thank you for that. So this is something I've done in my classes from time to time as well. One of the things that's important for mental health is that we check in with ourselves about where we are. And if some of you are very, very high because there are circumstances outside your control, like I urge you to recognize that it's not going to be a benefit to you to be interacting with students, to be helping students, if you're not at a place where you have some reasonable amount of, I have limited supply of energy, right? You have a limited supply of emotional capacity, of physical capacity, of caring. And so if you have students coming to you and you already feel like you are just overwhelmed, you're not going to be able to give them what they need and can actually do harm. And so we don't want to be in that situation. So if you're a faculty staff and you feel like you are in that situation, because I'm seeing some nonverbals that suggest some people feel that way, I'm going to go real quick over some resources that are available for us, although this is primarily to talk about students and helping our advisees and helping our students. So I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. There's First Sun, which is our EAP, and they will connect you with a therapist, a licensed therapist, that will give you 5 free sessions. And if you don't connect with that therapist, for whatever reason, I'm happy to give referrals because I have worked in mental health and private practice part-time, but for like 18 years. And so I know a lot of therapists, and would be happy to give you a resource that would be a network with whatever your insurance is. So that's one thing. Also, another thing is to be paying attention and keeping in mind that our sleep can really make a difference in our ability to handle whatever kind of stress that we may be having. So I don't know where that is for you, but if you need to meet with your medical healthcare provider to take care of your sleep or your overall health, those are first line kind of defense things that you can be thinking through and considering.
Yeah. Also, like not ingesting like sugar and things like that. Like sugar makes me really depressed. If I eat it in the following day, I feel really bad. So if you're in that kind of state,
drink lots of water.
Lots of water would be really important.
Okay, so that's not going to fix anything. That just makes it not worse, right? So that's kind of what we're trying to address in some kind of situation. I'll say another thing that makes it not worse, but doesn't fix things, is humor, right? So name 3 things you're good at. This is a question I would ask one of my clients, and they might say overthinking, second guessing, and stress eating. No, those do not count. That's not what I'm looking for there. This happened to me not so many days ago. I'm going to strongly recommend the app if y'all have never played with it. Give it a try. It's called Insight Timer. There are ones to help you fall asleep, but sometimes I'll get out my phone to do my meditation on my Insight Timer, and I'll realize I'm in my email. And I didn't even know that I was going to my email. I just went to my email. So, if you don't mind, I would like to meditate. And I can offer you a similar activity. Oh, there you go. Okay, that one. And that is not going to have the same kind of benefits. Y'all, we've seen them on the brain scan. It really does impact your actual neurological state when you allow yourself just to focus on one thing and just to be present with that one thing. Whatever kind of script you prefer or don't prefer, they have a lot of different choices on Insight Timer. All right, my last joke. Thought this is for our academics here. Found myself lost, not for the first time. In a dictionary Victorian slang, this is my favorite. Got the morbs. How many of you got the morbs? This was a literal phrase. It's temporary melancholy, an abstract noun coined from an adjective of morbid in 1880. So some of you may have got the morbs. But that also reminds us that mental health issues have been around for long, long periods of time. And one of the goals of advisors or faculty members is to be able to assess what is an urgent distress and like an actual crisis where I need to use the 24/7 teletherapy services that are going to be available, take the client or student, over to Ashley, contact Pastor Dave, like what, call security. Sometimes we're going to be calling security depending on what the actual issue is. Or when can I just say, you're telling me you're really depressed. Tell me more about that. What does that look like for you? Like sometimes I can just have a conversation. Again, if my needs have been met, I can have the space and the time and the presence to say, tell me more about what that's like. What have you tried already? What would you be open to trying? And sometimes just being seen and having a person that cares about them has a significant impact and may do enough to actually solve that little mini crisis because it wasn't an actual urgent distress call. So we're going to try to talk a little bit about the difference too. However, y'all look at this, please. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for college students. And this isn't going away. These numbers have only been increasing in terms of, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, disordered eating, pretty much any of the psychological disorders that we could be diagnosed with. It's basically more or less been increasing. There's a lot of interesting theories why. We could get into it. Obviously, social media is an impact, but I want to highlight this part that they're still learning. Their brain has not completely developed, and so they're still learning how to impulse control, how to emotionally regulate, how to problem solve complex tasks. And then we've got them in an environment where they're with other people that aren't doing that so great. And there's a lot of other things that can distract and numb, right? Numb, because I want to escape the current emotional experience I'm having. And so I can numb that emotional experience rather than actually try to adapt and adjust and make a different change or choice in that emotional experience. So there's a lot set up against them, but we have to be mindful that some of these things can be really severe. Y'all have some other things that y'all want to.
And again, as we've said, emotionally, they're not where they were 10 years ago. Freshmen coming in are not where they were post-COVID. They're not where they were even 5 years ago. So, and the phrase I heard last night, my husband has a pilot's license for helicopter parenting.
So what does that do to mental health for students?
For parents who are trying to buffer their child in whatever situation is going on in their life, and they're not learning how to cope, and they're not getting along with their roommate and the parents up here.
So that's 100. I'm not getting along with my roommate is 100 because I've not really had the experience of feeling discomfortable, feeling disappointed and uncomfortable and being distressed and working through it. I get to go to a new school. I get, rescued out of that. Not always. There's other things. Because actually, you had another thing.
Yeah. So I look at things from a trauma focused lens. So trauma. Students are coming to stuff. 9 days stuff I'm in a backpack. And so looking at it from that trauma lens, like Carrie was talking about, like their executive functioning, they're not able to make those decisions. So when you're little, when you're in an adverse environment or exposed to a lot of trauma, that frontal cortex is gonna underdevelop and your amygdala is gonna. So what does that look like? Everything is big. You're afraid of everything. You're always on high alert. You're in survival, and so it's easier to spin out. It's just easier to spin out of control, and not having this cope. And so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about our services or my services with the Wellness Center. It consists of myself, Renee Arnold, the nurse, and an PRN nurse, Vicki. Portia. She is a little amazing little lady. I don't have a picture of her, but she's pretty awesome as well. Some of the things that we do there for the health services part, they're like a triage center, so assessments when students come here not feeling well, maybe cold, stomach bug, that type of thing. They are making will conduct an assessment. They do some testing for like flu, strep, and they do pregnancy tests there. And they'll just depend on, from the assessment, they'll provide some over-the-counter medication, so that Benadryl, Tylenol, or something like that. But when it's more severe, they typically refer out. So for the longest, we had a long-standing relationship with Dr. Coffman. That's gonna look a little different because we do have the Dartmouth Nursing Center opening up. But I will still work very closely with him to work with students who are on medication, like ADHD medication, anxiety medication, that type of thing. And so for counseling services, I see students typically for anxiety, depression, relationship problems, and grief. Because again, life happens, and those services are free.
Where are you located and what are your typical hours?
Okay. So I'm located in the Wellness Center. I'm behind the Math and Science building, that little house.
You're not moving over to the nursing building.
No, I was really there. Yeah, and the hours are from 8:30 to 4. So, it's basically, like I said, it's free to students. And so, and with supporting students in their mental health, it's really critical, for the success of them to achieve academically. I always say to assess the needs behind the behavior. A lot of times we can look at the behavior because it's so big. Assessing the needs behind behavior is really, really important because that's how you can find out what's really going on. Students feel a sense of connectedness, they feel belonging. I shared a story in the last session about I had a cousin in church, little young, crying, could not figure out what was wrong with them, tried throughout the whole service. And then mom finally figured out to take off his shoes. His feet was hurting. And he couldn't express that. Like, he couldn't express, like, all these shoes are hurting my feet. And a lot, that happens with mental health. You don't have the words. You're beyond the words to kind of even express what's going on. So that can look a lot like that. So, and it also increases the engagement in the learning environment. Students are going to be more, inclined to participate in class and turn in their work to come to class. And also the direct partnership with the resources within the college. Partnership.
And again, that's where I can be a resource to you, to your students. My role as campus pastor is to really nurture all of the students, all of the faculty, no matter what their faith background, little to no background. Post-COVID, we've seen a lot of folks not returning to church. A lot of these students haven't been to church in a while or have never been raised in a church environment. So that then looks different for what it means to be at a college, Christian college, and different expectations with that too. But again, I'm here to help connect the mind, body, soul, and spirit as we learn and grow and move forward and then send them out into the world. So I'm available for devotions, Bible study, film and theology conversations, making the faith connection to your area of expertise, times of prayer. Times of prayer, I'm a listening ear as well. You're for encouragement, and then I don't judge, except the passions.
And I'll just do a little plug. I go to a lot of chapels, not all, and it's not required. It's not required for faculty. It's not required for staff. It's not required for students. But every time I leave, I do feel more encouraged. It's like a little pause. It's a little time to reflect. It's a little time to be pointed upward and outward, which is usually very therapeutic. So I would just encourage that if you haven't been, to experiment with that.
And then I'm on social media. And so if you follow Instagram, Twitter,
Will you announce the chapel time for our new folks?
so Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. And so we do try to make that sacrosanct. There should be meetings.
No meetings, no classes at that time, right?
So and we've told the coaches that too. So it gives folks the opportunity to come to chapel. And we invite different teams to chapel for Lord's blessing, so you get to see students outside classrooms. And a lot of different speakers.
So you're probably, again, either going to, at some point in the next week or this week, have a student or an advisee come to you with a mental health concern or make a direct statement that may suggest that their mental health is unstable. Again, check in with yourself first. Do you have some emotional energy to expend at this spot? If you do, then I would strongly encourage you to at least start a conversation with them. And that would start with asking another question. Because what I may say is, I'm feeling really depressed. Maybe to you, maybe like a total different level of what you interpret that question to be. That could be everything from I'm not getting out of bed and not showering and not brushing my teeth and really thinking about a plan right now to end my own life, to I just had a really bad situation and I'm feeling depressed, right? So we don't know unless we ask a little bit more of those open-ended kind of questions like, well, tell me what that means to you, or can you tell me more about that? And then if they're telling you about that and you would kind of put it into like a life adjustment category, again, you're not minimizing that this is a very real concern for them, but a life adjustment category, you may ask them the follow-up question, what kind of things have worked for you in the past? Or what have you already tried? Because the worst thing to happen is for someone to start giving you advice and you've already done all the things that they've already told you to do, okay? So what have you already tried, or what have you done in the past? Those are some really basic, what we would call like your school counselor would ask, like, is a school counseling kind of question, because it's basic life kind of question. Now, I want to go to the distress student flow chart before I need to exit here and take care of my mental health by picking up my kids on their first day of school. And so, like, do I have a relationship? Okay, we're assuming that you do, and then they're letting you know that they have some kind of situation. If possible, one-on-one, it's going to be best with that student. I know a lot of you, I see you take a student into, your office, leave the door cracked, and have a conversation with them. And tell the student, if you've noticed behaviors, maybe you're this has happened to me at least, actually, like probably almost 5 times now, where I've seen a student's grades drop, and this has been traditionally a good student. And so I find them a lot of times in the cafeteria. I just happen to come upon them, like, what's going on? And we step aside. I've heard about sexual assaults this way. I've learned about deaths of family members this way. Like, you learn the tragedy of their life, and they do need a counselor. They do need someone right now to walk with them in this, and they need academic services to notify all the professors that there's been something going on, and hey guys, we need some kind of like, if you can work with a student, work with a student, because there's just been this like mental health piece that they're dealing with, and they are seeing now. But a lot of times they don't know what they don't know, and so they don't even know that that's a possibility. Like, they're just thinking, okay, I'm just going to fail this semester. This is my life now because of this assault, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Real quick, I did put Pathways to Healing on here. Y'all will get an email in the next day or two. I'll put it out somewhere. I'll put it out of the resource. I know it's somewhere out there. But it's on the stress flow chart. It's so long I couldn't put it all in one place. But Pathways to Healing is for any kind of sexual trauma that happens, and they're free too. So, Ashley's free, but she's one person. We also have another network, which is Pathways to Healing, that's available in the community, that's also free and confidential as well. Of course, if it's a Title IX issue, that's a separate thing that also needs to be reported. Here's some other things, though, that if you think it's urgent, but not emergent, like despair, not eating, nonsensical rambling and ranting, you don't want to leave that person by themselves. If that's a yes, you're going to either call campus safety or security, or you're going to make sure the the paramedics come, and you don't need to be alone. You can call in resources. You can certainly notify Ashley, notify your dean. But if someone is rambling, if someone is despair, if they're not eating, those are the behavior signs. So we're going to ask them what kinds of things they're doing, or if it's things we can observe, then that's when we want to take more direct steps. But then there's also things that are like not a crisis, not urgent, not emergent, that you can ask the student, like, what are things that you've done in the past? Who else could you talk to? Are you comfortable going to counseling? Can I email them for you? I often email for the student. I get their permission, but I often email for the student because they're just, and CC them on it, because they're just like hesitant to make that first step. so depending on your cultural background, some people are very suspicious of any kind of doctors or mental health care. And so that's another thing to be considering as well.
So how do we get there? By creating pathways, by creating that connection for those students across campus. Letting them know what services are available for them. So fostering a safe educational environment, collaborative effort. Myself, working with Pastor Green, connecting with the Center for Student Success, and as well as other resources on campus. And caring for the whole student, like Pastor Armin said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, I was just saying you guys were paying attention. That's what that was. But like Pastor David said, caring for the whole student, so the mind, body, and the soul. And so I know time is limited, you don't have time to maybe devote all of this time to a student, but definitely checking in, making sure, watching for things like their behavior, seeing if their appearance is changing, because that has happened. I remember a professor came in, a student was in active psychosis. But good that that professor was proactive and was like, hey, when this student first came in, they were neatly dressed, hair was done, da 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 da. I am noticing these changes. I didn't see it because for faculty and staff, you guys are the heartbeat of this campus. You see these students. You have a high, you see these students more than I do. And so with that being said, I'm only here, for a certain amount of time, and we just partnered with Christie Campus Health, and it is a 24/7 crisis hotline. I do not have I don't have a date yet to go live, but we are working on some things, getting some information, and hopefully soon we can put that in place. But some of the services that this program will offer is, of course, the 24/7 support line. So doing risk assessments when students call when there's nobody here on campus. Connecting, students to a therapist. So we're going to do teletherapy. And it may be something like, oh, I was just really upset at this moment. I typically see Miss Ashley, so I'll connect with her the next day. I'll get a report of all the calls, so which is a good thing as well. They'll have Headspace on there. It's a mindfulness app, kind of teaches students how to stress less, how to focus. So they don't have wandering thoughts, or just kind of how to work with those. And also another service is the ICBT. So that's going to be an internet-based cognitive behavior therapy. It's to help decrease some of that stinking thinking is what I call it. That stinking thinking can have you just all over the place. And I always tell my students, the body follows the mind. So if we have, try to stay as healthy as possible mentally, it helps us to kind of to put that energy out to do well. Mental health is the new wealth. So wellness is going to be a wellness hub. So assessments, those are some of the self-assessments, like, I just haven't been feeling myself. I feel a little stressed. I feel a little depressed. So you can do the little assessments yourself. Go in and check in and say, hey, I scored kind of high, or maybe, or maybe it could just be needing some sleep. So we'll have a navigator on there as well, and that navigator is kind of just support students with reaching out to community resources, referrals, as well as campus resources. So they'll have a list of everything that's on the campus as well.
And again, it's part of, for students, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Right. And you have this knowledge and experience, and it's trying to help them along the way, along the journey, and making sure we have the good resources and through whatever they're going through.
And students are always on their cell phone. They want things on their cell phone. They want things, because like my system that I have now in the wellness center is a very old system. It's a paper system. So I'm like, well, I need you to fill out this confidentiality form. Can you send it to me? You gotta come get it. Come get it. So this is going to change, hopefully make it easier for students. And so this is Carrie's piece. You want to tag team with me?
So Carrie talked a little bit about some of the things that she does in her class. She has look at your syllabus and find a way to have that mental health check in your syllabus. Give them that opportunity, give them an assignment where they can take a self-care day of sorts. But then also normalize mental health, normalize your own experience appropriately. How my counselor, well, but normalize it. It's okay to go see the counselor. Hey, I was talking with Ashley the other day, and we really had a great conversation about mental health. And so you might also check that out. Thinking about the growth mindset when, as she describes, the brain isn't fully formed until 25, right? So we've got to work with students who are still figuring stuff out.
That impulsiveness.
And this generation gotta have it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So those are some things to and encouraging students to dig a little deeper in real relationships. Oh yeah, I talk and text and connect with folks on social media all the time. Well, are you really sitting down and talking with folks? Are you eating lunch with folks? Are you getting over some of that awkward behavior over and over again? And being vulnerable with your colleagues, student to student colleagues. And one of the things she mentioned earlier, the Insight is an app that she mentioned.
Inside time.
Insight Timer and Headspace.
Yeah. And so, this last little piece, if your compassion does not include yourself, it's incomplete. Remember to check in with yourself. Remember, know those boundaries, know those limits. Did that exercise earlier about your thermometer, your gauge, gauging yourself, gauging how you feel. That's really, really important. And thank you for your time. The references and questions.
I'm glad you mentioned that about finding women working and about encouraging them to seek help. From my own experience, I come from a family where mental health care was looked at with suspicion. One thing in our family was only crazy. And that's not true. And I know this because I've had depression, I've had anxiety, I've had other issues. I go talk to somebody every couple of months. And this is up to you, however comfortable you are with it. But I have found to say, look, I go and talk to somebody because I've been through this. I know what you're up against, all right? I know what it's like to do this. These students look at us as role models. And it's a way for me to say, look, I'm human just like it can happen to many of us. And I'm not ashamed to talk about it because it makes me part of the professor that they know and for love. So don't, it's up to you how much you share about yourself. Right. I'm not ashamed of it, and I want to encourage them to live their best selves.
Yay.
Thank you for sharing that. I always say the healing starts hurt. When the student feels hurt, that's when they get start. They probably struggle with, trying to figure out, like, do I say something? Are they going to think something's wrong with me? In my culture, it's not okay to not be okay. It's not okay to not be strong. So making that student feel heard is just really important. That can be the start to a beautiful journey.
It's a start to reorganizing the baggage that they've come. Honestly.
Do this little exercise. Okay.